Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome to another episode of the Testing Ground TIC Talks, a podcast where we discuss all things TIC with the experts who are providing technical expertise and driving growth across multiple sectors. TIC impacts every industry and every product that we interact with. TIC companies are the unsung heroes that keep our world moving and most importantly safe, certainly from my angle. And also within this conversation, we will uncover the human side of executives in high pressure environments, taking a bit skew if with a few ARI questions. For today's episode, I'm incredibly grateful to be joined by Jonathan Scislow, global market expert and current director of global market access with DECRA. Jonathan, thank you very much for being a guest.
Happy to join.
Super. Well, look, we'll get straight in, and as every other podcast that we've been very lucky to record, it always starts with the question from my last guest, and that was Mike Shorden. And his question, and again, I say this every time, I'm happy it's not me answering it. So I know you've had a bit of time to look over this one, but Mike said TIC is at a crossroads. What does the industry need to do to make it as viable, needed, and attractive for the future?
Yeah, so Mike mentioned quite a bit about self-certification and the shift towards commoditization within our industry. So I think those are kind of the important points to touch on here. When we look at self-certification, we've got a couple of examples on the market. So one is the CE mark, where you're essentially self-declaring to the requirements of the European Union. What you find when you actually look into the data of doing spot check testing of products that have been self-declared, it's not great data in terms of there are a lot of things that are not in compliance, some of them safety critical. And you even have more nascent self-certification programs that are coming as well, like Brazil is making a shift towards self-declaration. That's really intended to spur the economy, to simplify things for manufacturers. But I find the opposite is almost true. We have an example now where actually one of our competitors came to us and said, we're having this problem in Brazil. We can't figure out what's going on. And come to find it's a self-certification product. The InMetro does not allow the certification bodies to actually provide any support to the manufacturers. So you're trying to move towards this self-certification model that is actually making things a lot more complicated and confusing for manufacturers. So I think kind of what we do about that is really on the advocacy side of things. So personally, I'm the TIC Council. I'm chair for the product subcommittee, where we do lobbying with lawmakers to help ensure that the needs of our industry are vocalized with the authorities having jurisdiction. We do that also in Latin America as well and throughout the world. I think that's really an important piece of this, is that advocacy with the actual policymakers. And then another point he touched on was that commoditization. So I think this is kind of a double-edged sword. I think there are things in the TIC industry that absolutely should not be commoditized. So safety should never be a commodity. But there are, when you look at global market access, many things that actually should be a commodity. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of repeat testing in different countries. So finding ways to commoditize those things that should be commoditized to help manufacturers, while also advocating for the things that are really critical, I think are the ways that we can kind of navigate this crossroads.
It's similar to the AI certification, isn't it? It's something that is recommended in certain states. I think California's one, but it's not.
Yeah.
Forced. And obviously, we see with the recent news of Apple and them having ChatGPT on their phone. How is that going to be?
Yeah.
Managed? Similar with Apple and Google Pay and things like that. It seems like it's a very, very tricky. Well, not even a product, is it? But a tricky system to be certified. So
we're at a time of very rapid development in that area. So definitely a complicated piece to navigate.
Does that differ between countries at the moment when you're looking at obviously access for some sort of certification or product to be in that region? Obviously it will vary. Like Saudi Arabia is an emerging one, but with AI, is it the same standard from
Yeah,
the
when
US, Europe, and
when you look at kind of these new regulations, usually there's a cascade of how things are rolled out worldwide. So
mm,
usually the market leaders are United States, Europe, some of the major markets, Japan, China may implement some type of requirements, and then those kind of get cascaded throughout the world.
mhm.
So we're seeing probably more movement on the cybersecurity side in terms
Okay.
of actual regulations that are starting to get implemented. Still pretty new in terms of making anything mandatory, though. And then AI, there's a lot of legislation coming out, but we're still trying to figure out how to navigate this within the tech industry. So areas we're looking at, but I think a lot of work to do still.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you touched upon, obviously, and I introduced you, Jonathan, global market access expert. For me, I know a little bit about it, obviously from working in the TIC space for some time, and hearing that buzzword, and also looking at opportunities for people in this space. But for the novice, and I'm including myself as a novice, and I'm very excited to know this. But what is global market access, and why do we need it in TIC?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is our industry loves acronyms. So you see GMA means Global Market Access. In DECRA, we also use ITA, which stands for International Type Approvals. So regardless of what you call it, I think it's all about helping manufacturers navigate complexity.
Hmm.
So it's the service that we provide to help clients get their products to market while meeting compliance requirements in every country around the world. So that means safety requirements, EMC, RF, energy efficiency, chemical, food contact materials, labeling. There's a whole host of different regulations that you have to meet to take a product to market. And navigating that on the international level is very complicated. So GMA is really the service that we provide to help simplify that complexity and navigate how to get that product to market while meeting all of the applicable regulations.
Hmm. So it's quite a complex
Yes.
process, yeah. And but it's interesting because obviously you're working with products that are going into new markets like Saudi Arabia.
Mhm.
Obviously a part of the world which obviously of recent is developing at a credible speed, and obviously the certifications there need to be looked at. I think obviously from knowing about it, but yeah, what other areas to you, Jonathan, are kind of these new and hot markets for GMA that companies will be looking at?
Yeah, I think there's always the biggest markets. Everybody's always taking products to China, Japan, Korea, Brazil.
Mm,
There's a lot of development globally. Anytime there's a whole host of regulations that are changing everywhere in the world that we need to navigate. I think some developing areas are there a lot more energy efficiency regulations starting to go into place in Latin America. As we talked a little bit about earlier, cybersecurity and moving forward, more artificial intelligence are probably areas that countries are going to look at a lot more closely.
mm,
In terms of where the hot markets are, it's in part driven by manufacturers and what are the developing economies, and then for us that actually sit in GMA, a lot of times the hot markets are the ones that are changing their regulations, and we have to navigate through that change.
so and where do you see the biggest opportunity then? We may have touched on that a little bit there, but
Yeah. I think within GMA, one of the big opportunities is in simplifying that complexity that we talked about. So part of that can be coordinating internationally to monitor changing regulations, but then also finding ways to streamline the certification process. So limit the retesting, simplify the process for manufacturers. So as an opportunity for TIC and an opportunity for GMA within TIC organizations, I think finding ways to try and condense that complexity down and simplify it, make it more or less one path to certification as opposed to 20 different paths to get your products to 20
yeah,
markets. I think that simplification of complexity is the real critical area here.
that probably seems a lot harder than what it sounds. So yeah,
Yeah, and it
all the
sounds
best.
hard.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And then So I mean, obviously that is, one of the biggest opportunities to simplify that process.
Mhm.
Would you then say that is again, I mean, we're looking at what is the biggest area for development within GMA? Is it
Yeah,
streamlining that?
yeah. I think in terms of development, I kind of come back to that advocacy piece that I touched on a little bit about at the
Mm,
beginning. I think there's definitely a lot more room for regulatory convergence and simplification of regulations. And by that, I don't mean deregulation. I don't mean move everything to self-certification. But what I do mean is things like working with countries to develop mutual recognition accreditate or approvals, so MRAs, to get agreements where you can test in one location, certify in multiple locations. So again, we're commoditizing that paperwork piece while maintaining the safety piece. So it's still kind of on that simplifying complexity thing, but the development here is really around how to do that effectively through driving the regulations towards ways that we can have kind of this alignment between countries rather than a disparate approach to certification across the world.
okay. So again, quite a big one. Excellent. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
this one even bigger because simplifying complexity, a lot of that you can do through internal tools, through resource development. So you can take one application and populate it into multiple applications. That is a development piece, but when you look at this regulatory convergence piece, it's more about um, working with policymakers. It's about developing MRAs. So it's a lot more, external focused and working with the different players within the GMA tick space, as opposed to just the internal development piece.
okay, excellent. And obviously, a big part of these podcasts anyway, Jonathan, is just to look at, kind of bring light to, how do we keep, kind of, the people from outside the industry and, the younger generation getting involved in the tech space. And this question is really kind of tailored. I don't know. I mean, it's all, very much, yourself, because I'm asking about what is the best
Yeah.
project you ever worked on. I mean, with that in mind as well, has there been one which you think would kind of bring, people to the industry?
Yeah, I think best is a really fuzzy word. I've worked
Yes.
on a lot of very good projects, but I think the way I want to answer this one is more the most fun project that I've worked on.
Yeah.
So, working in GMA, we get to see a whole host of different types of products. And there are times that we see products, before they actually get to market. So, one that I worked on was for a company called Sphero. They make little robots that drive around, and the project that I worked on, I had to sign NDAs, and this has since been, very public knowledge. But
Okay.
they developed the BB-8 droid. So if you're familiar with the Star Wars movies, when they made the announcement about the new droid coming in the new movies, the BB-8, the little orange and white guy that rolls
Yeah.
around, I had been doing certifications on a remote controlled BB-8 droid for months before those announcements came out. So it was really fun to see that, and really hard to not tell all my friends about this new
Right.
Star Wars
Okay.
thing that I was seeing. But I did all their certifications in Latin America, so that was a really exciting project for me.
Oh, nice. Were these like for people to buy and use, or these for like industrial use?
Yeah, this is for like it's basically a toy. It's a little
Okay.
10 centimeter robot that you
Yeah.
control with your phone and use Bluetooth to steer it around and drive around and have your dogs chase it.
Oh, nice. Do you have one?
We have two dogs. Yep.
Oh, nice. No, do you have the droid as
Oh
well?
no, no, I don't have one. It's been a long time since it came out, and they discontinued the app for
Ah.
controlling it. So now it's basically a paperweight.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have one, but I've played around with them a little bit.
Nice. And that's, that certainly seems like a good opportunity to have worked on, something like that, and, be working with a product before it even goes to market or anyone even knows about it. So,
Yep.
and kind of similar, best, I do agree, it's a bit of a fuzzy word, but, from working in the tech industry, what opportunity has this given you? I know you started out into tech as a medical engineer, but working your way through, how is that kind of, what opportunities has it given you?
Yeah, so I think I'll kind of answer this in two different ways. One is
Mm,
kind of professional opportunities, and then one is on a little bit more personal level. So, professionally, I think the biggest thing that I've benefited from is really working in a small niche within the tech industry. So, by getting involved in global market access, I was able to very quickly become one of the go-to experts at Intertech when I started there. And that has since opened a lot of doors for opportunities to take on different management leadership roles, leading a team of 85 different people at UL across 14 different countries. So I think really by being in that little niche within the broader organization and the expertise that that requires, it opens a lot of doors professionally. So that's one of the big opportunities that I've had through being involved in global market access specifically. On a little bit more personal level, I have also had the pleasure of traveling internationally
mm.
with my role. So between professional and personal travel, I've been in over 40 different countries. So a lot of opportunities to meet people, to learn about different cultures. And then I've also been able to a little bit selfishly combine one of my personal hobbies with my work as well. In that a lot of times I will travel to a place for work and then I'll stay a long weekend to do mountaineering. So
Okay.
through work trips, I've been able to climb a lot of the three of the tallest mountains in Mexico. And then I also, on a weekend after a business trip in Italy, summited the Matterhorn on the border of Italy and Switzerland.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Well, I'm very jealous. Yeah, obviously Matterhorn is quite the yeah, quite the, well, the thing to look at, I guess, probably for lack of
Yes,
a better word.
very
But
challenging climb.
yeah, I can imagine. Well, amazing. And how have you found it? And obviously, I mentioned there, or I alluded to, you started off your career as a medical engineer. Now you're, leading the GMA program for Deco across the US. How has that happened then? How have you gone from, being a certified medical device? I don't know if it's, being electrical. Well, I imagine it's electrical or what kind of electrical devices there were, but now, doing this, how has that happened?
Yeah, so in terms of how I kind of navigated my career, so I started in medical device testing. I was interested in medical products. I had interned with St. Jude Medical, and I think really the biggest thing that has taken me through my career up to this point is a love of learning. You have in GMA, it's a really great business to learn something every day because you deal with a different product type. Some regulation is changing every single day. So I quickly moved from that testing piece, the engineering piece, into more of a project management type role. And then through that, opened doors to leadership positions, first building and developing UL's small appliance business, then moved into leading up their certification office globally. And now here at DICRA, I'm responsible for the Americas regional business. So any work that we do in the Americas region for taking products elsewhere in the world, that's under my purview of responsibility. So I think kind of the biggest through line is really that just being interested in learning things and working through complex problems since things are changing all the time. But I really enjoy that. So I think it's really a great environment for me personally to thrive in.
Super. I think that must be your obviously your engineering, mindset. You have a problem, you need to solve it. I think
Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot, especially within the TIC space. There is a plethora of engineers and real experts in this industry, and whether or not they go on to, to lead, TIC businesses or become a subject matter expert, it's the same thing. There is a problem and they need to solve it. And yeah, it's been unfortunate that's not how my mind works, if anyone knows me. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
I have kind of the dual approach in that sometimes when you look at um, kind of the business side of running things, you need to put aside that engineering brain a little bit
yeah,
to to not go into all the nitty gritty details and to keep things moving. So I've had to really develop a little bit of a balance between that engineering mind and the business mind.
Yeah, it's a difficult blend to have, I'd imagine. But okay, and obviously, as we've mentioned there, you've started as an engineer now, obviously leading the Decora's program. What would be the best bit of advice then you would give to someone maybe in that position when you kind of came into the TIC world?
Yeah, I think for me the way that I was able to develop my career very quickly was through that niche approach. So finding a small area of the business that really interests you and become the absolute expert in that area. So that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be GMA. It could be, I'm going to be the expert in battery safety, or whatever interests you in the TIC space. I think by kind of niching down and becoming an expert, you can, number one, become the go-to person for that product area.
Mhm.
Opens a lot of doors for presenting at conferences, things like that, getting your name out there. And then as you transition from being the expert to training others to be experts, you kind of shift your mindset from um, doing things yourself to teaching, coaching, training, whether that's internally with staff that you're developing or whether it's externally through training clients and speaking at conferences. I think by finding that niche that really fits you, I think that's really critical to, number one, making sure you're going to enjoy your work, and have something to come to work to every day. But then number two, also, I think it's a really great way to help develop your career more quickly as well.
Yeah, I think as well with the tech industry is amazing, is it? Because you're working with experts, especially if they've come from industry, have seen all these different kind of ways in which companies operate, and then you come into a tech company which is obviously service based, and there is just so many different ways in which people work and which ways people have progressed into their jobs, which just means there is so much information that if you wanted to sit down and speak to everyone, you'd probably learn a million different ways in the, how to work and how to get to different places in your career. So no, I think it's a very good point. And you know, when I'm speaking to my friends about being a recruit in the tech space, it's quite easy for me to well, not easy, but I give a very,
Mhm.
very kind of, you know, broad overview, or not even a broad, but an overview which lasts about 30 seconds now. I've whittled it down, proper elevator pitch. But
Mhm.
how do you describe the tech industry to your friends when they ask what you do?
Yeah, so I'll have to flip the script here and ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
Um, Harry, when was the last time one of the appliances in your house started on fire?
On fire? No, never.
Oh, okay. When was the last time you got electrocuted?
A few years ago, probably on a very old kind of like multi-adapter.
Okay. And then when was the last time the battery in your cell phone exploded?
Never.
Never? Okay.
No.
So these are the things that we do. So we make sure that you can't completely eliminate risks. Like you said, on an old product, you have been electrocuted before.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is really risk mitigation. So we do testing to make sure that products meet safety standards, so that we reduce as much as possible these risks of fire, electrocution, mechanical hazards, all of those types of things. So we're kind of, if you don't know what we do, we're doing our job well because the products that are around you seem to be inherently safe.
Okay. No, I love that. That's really good. That's very good. Okay, and obviously that's really interested me even more into the tech industry. But how do we keep tick the tech industry interesting to young professionals? I ask it every time, and I always get some really good answers. So I thought I'd ask you the same question, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think really through innovation. So we're a very old industry. A lot of the companies in our industry are 100 plus years old. So by bringing new solutions to old problems, I think that's how we keep things engaging to young people that are coming into the industry, but also make sure that we are iterating and developing and learning as we go. So there's a lot of areas for development within the tick space that are being explored, things like automation, um, simulating tests as opposed to physically running every single test, so using computer simulations. We spoke a little bit earlier about artificial intelligence. I think this is both a challenge and an opportunity, ways that we can potentially leverage AI technologies, ways that we can get involved in terms of TIC being the ones who step in to help make sure that AI solutions are robust and meet standard requirements. So by getting into these kind of new areas and by using new technology to solve some of these old problems, I think that's what will really keep things interesting and keep people engaged, and also help us to recruit, because these are kind of the next areas, regardless of whether people are coming into the tick space. They're looking at these new areas for development. So if we're innovating here, we can be the ones that drive the talent to the tick industry.
Excellent. No, I think it's a big topic, and certainly one that I think other guests have mentioned. We have to tick, like you said, is a little bit of an old industry, so it has to move. It has to move with the times, doesn't it? It has to kind of be able to utilize the new and exciting technology and systems to the best visibility. Okay, and now kind of over to you, Jonathan. As with every podcast, asking the expert on the other side, well, the expert on the side of the camera. What question should I be asking my next guest?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to hone in on that artificial intelligence topic a little bit. So within AI, there's a lot of opportunities, simplifying complexity, like we talked about, building AI-related tick services. There's also a lot of risks. So the point that you raised about the Apple integration with ChatGPT, that raises a lot of confidentiality concerns. It potentially opens up areas for accessing data that should not be accessed. So there are security risks. There are also concerns about obsolescence, so replacement of roles and functions within organizations that people are doing today, which can be seen either as a good thing or as a bad thing. So kind of getting back to my question is, do you see recent developments in artificial intelligence more as a risk to tech companies or more as an opportunity?
Super. Very good question, and very quite fitting for the next guest as well. So it'll be good to reveal who that is when the time comes. But Jonathan, thank you very much for being a guest on the Testing Ground Tick Talks. I'm sure our listeners will be very excited to give this one a listen. But no, thank you very much. I'm very honoured that you taken the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.